I think is the essence of what he was getting at. Because I do think that, particularly with myself, but one or two other people as well, we were hypnotized and a little bit bamboozled by the sheer radiance of the guy. And I'll go on a little bit more about that in a moment. But in terms of why I would recommend him, I came down to three distinct reasons. And the first one is, I'm going to call vocabulary. Okay, we can take that's not relevant particularly, other than that's relevant to Shakespeare. Excuse me, I'm going to call it, this first one here is vocabulary. One, vocabulary. Now, what I mean by that is, having worked with one or two other characters and one or two other people, one of the things that is terribly impressive about Halliday is his use of vocabulary. Not just his use of vocabulary, but speaking on a personal level, and I'm speaking to a group of people here who are also sort of northerners. Mostly, I think everybody here is a northerner, except perhaps Mr. Corley in the corner there, who hails from Jersey.
Something like that.
Foreign devil. And well, the thing that got me about Halliday when I first heard him, with Ken Ratcliffe as well, is that they spoke a language which was very familiar to me. They were Northern English people, and Lancastrians, same as myself, because Liverpool was part of Lancaster when I first started going to see them, and this now, of course.
Lancashire.
Lancashire, yes. And the very language itself was familiar, the tone of it, and a lot of the anecdotes and the way the anecdotes were structured were very familiar. So it was easy for me, and it's easy for us, essentially, to take them on. But I mean, that's a local thing, and he is a local boy. But in terms of English, his command of English was, I would say, complete. And that is very important, because we're talking about an area of development and endeavour which is really quite subtle. And most of the time, we're dealing with nuances. There are general thrusts which, yes, I mean, they would come across in most languages, you'd be able to trace them and nail them down. But when you're talking about subtlenesses and the nuances of activities in meditation, feeling states, the references that the language makes become very important. It is so easy to mistake something or to misinterpret something, and it's very difficult sometimes to clarify an idea and to nail it down in a final state. And for me, to have it in English from an Englishman was very important. Made life a lot easier. If you've dealt with, I mean, quite a number of you I know have dealt with Indian teachers and, you know, people from different European groups as well, and it is difficult to know exactly what they're referring to. And with having an English teacher in that sense, that was very important for me. And I mean, I know the group I'm talking to now, that would be helpful too. But even beyond that, his use of language and his understanding of language was complete. I think in that sense, this particular title here, this particular recommendation of vocabulary, is a self-referent one, because not only was he complete in his language, he recommended the development of your language to be one of the paramount and certainly one of the prior things that you should tackle. So firstly, he wanted you to work on your vocabulary. He wanted you to get a structured language that you understood. He spoke particularly of passive language and active language. Most of us, and I still speak for myself, have words that we don't understand exactly what they mean. We use them and we have a vague understanding of them. He was saying that that is dangerous for understanding, that is dangerous for misunderstanding. You should make your language active. You should try and find out exactly what it means and how you should use it, particularly with concepts that you're working on. And if you do that with concepts that you're working on and literally use a dictionary, and he recommended several dictionaries, then you find that your progress is far more rapid, plus you can discuss things with other people. One of the things which was very noticeable when you go to other groups is that they will discuss things like the soul, or feeling levels and psychological processes, without defining what they mean. The impressive thing about Halliday is in his talks he's always defining words as he goes along. So he doesn't introduce a concept without he defines it. And even though we all know it, he still goes to the definition. And if he's extending the definition, he tells you he's extending the definition and why he's doing this in this particular instance. That is incredibly enlightening in itself. And he gives you a definition which you can then bring to other groups, and often you'll find that when you introduce a definition, they can talk with you. They may ultimately reject your idea of what a soul is and what a particular feeling state might be, or a psychological type, but at least it gives you a ground from which to discuss. Even if you disagree, you know where and why you disagree. Instead of one person talking about, I mean, take that word soul, the references that we have to it in English are completely meaningless. We have soul food and soul music, and, you know, the world soul. The whole concept of all these ideas and how it can be reinterpreted in different situations needs to be nailed down. Needs to be nailed down for us if we're trying to develop. Because if you don't, the word slips through your fingers and the concept slips through your fingers, and you don't know what your soul is. Is it a particular diet sheet to produce soul food? You know? Is it, I once saw a painting called The Soul of a Lamppost. And I've carried that concept with me for a long time. How on earth could you have the soul of a lamppost? What did he mean? Well, it's a vague meaning, isn't it? You can sort of understand what it means, or, you know, but when you try and nail it down, it's just not there. It's just not there at all.
Soul of your feet.
Well, yes, I went to the Est group, and they used to sort of say, keep your soul in the room. And by that we mean both feet. Which was a good way of putting it. So, vocabulary is very important, and it's very important that you have an active vocabulary. So I thought what I'd do is just show you a little bit of why it's important. If I can lift the damn books. And there's two of the books which you recommended that we use. They're big and they are impressive, and if you can't reach the top shelf of the library, you can always stand on them. So they're useful in many ways, but they are very, very useful in terms of giving you an active vocabulary. So, how are they useful? Well, you can look in this one, for instance, and look up the word vocabulary, which I did earlier, and here it is, and it will tell you that it means the stock of words employed by an individual speaker, author, class of persons, the range and scope of their language, or, you know, an ordinary labourer is said to have a vocabulary of only a few hundred words. Shakespeare had a rich vocabulary of thousands of words. So there's a simple, immediate description of it. But Eugene didn't want us to do just that. I mean, this is an etymological dictionary. He wanted us to look at the roots. Now, what he was saying was, about vocabulary here, is that starting with the old tradition, that the very use of words that we have came from sounds which were made very primitively by the original human beings, and that these have developed, and that we are actually, as human beings, part of a tribe which is very, very sophisticatedly developed and spread itself out and contradicted and extended its use of language from that original root, that in fact there was originally just one spoken language which has developed into the many hundreds and thousands of tongues which there are now. If you go back to the roots of language, you find that you subsume words together.